Assalamu alaikum and welcome to tonight's edition of Beyond the News. I am ATIQ HUSSAIN. As you know, on this program, every night we discuss and analyze the leading current affairs topics of the day. And of course, tonight will be no exception. The topics that we'll be discussing on tonight's program, the Prime Minister has met the Chief Minister and the Governor of Sindh in Karachi. We'll discuss the details of what was discussed. Then we'll move on to the Pakistan cricket team's defeat. Of course, very disappointing for the cricket fans in this country. Just about everyone in this country is a cricket fan. And there's a fanatical following for the sport in this country. Everyone knows that. And of course, there's huge disappointment that Pakistan has actually lost a home test series to New Zealand after 49 years. 1969 was the last time that New Zealand beat Pakistan in Pakistan. Of course, this is regarded as a home series, although it's played in the United Arab Emirates. We'll talk about that. Police have detained hundreds of yellow vest protesters in Paris. We'll talk about that. Of course, the yellow vest movement started when President Emmanuel Macron of France imposed a fuel tax, but then those protests have now mushroomed into something much larger and something much more disconcerting and worrisome for the French. We'll discuss that. And of course, China is in a tiff with Canada over the arrest of the chief financial officer of the Huawei Corporation. China has threatened Canada with, quote, consequences if the Huawei chief financial officer is not released. Now, Chief Executive Officer Richard Morin has big plans for revamping the Pakistan Stock Exchange. We'll talk about that. The Pakistan Stock Exchange has seen a very bumpy ride, a roller coaster ride over the last several months, ever since the new government took office. And we'll discuss that as to how the Pakistan Stock Exchange can be revamped. But first, our top story tonight. Prime Minister Imran Khan was in Karachi for a day-long visit in which he reviewed the ongoing political situation in the province, as well as the development of various uplift projects undertaken by the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf-led federal government. The Prime Minister was received by the Sindh Governor Imran Ismail upon his arrival in the metropolis. On a day-long visit to the economic hub of the country, the Prime Minister and President Arif Alvi spent a busy day at the Governor's house today. Both leaders also conducted meetings with members of the business community, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Sindh Assembly members and other relevant delegations. Today's visit was Prime Minister Imran Khan's second visit to Karachi after he assumed the top office in the country. He last visited Karachi in September. Now, yesterday was the International Corruption Day, for which President Arif Alvi gave a strong address to a ceremony urging all Pakistani citizens to play their part in eliminating corruption and paving the way for economic growth and prosperity. Describing corruption as, quote, a major hindrance against development and prosperity, President Arif Alvi said that it hurt business and the economy, which, quote, in turn sabotages the prosperity of the nation. Also addressing the seminar held in Islamabad, the chairman of the National Accountability Bureau, Justice retired Javed Iqbal, warned elements in society trying to, quote, spread propaganda against the National Accountability Bureau that the people of Pakistan were not so gullible that they could not differentiate between right and wrong. Of course, the National Accountability Bureau has been criticized heavily by the opposition parties, in particular the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz and the Pakistan People's Party. More to discuss on the day-to-day current affairs, of course. We are joined on the telephone by Rahman Azhar, political analyst and host of the show Centrepoint. He joins us on the telephone right now. Rahman, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Atiq, for having me.
Now, this has been the second visit of the Prime Minister to the city, where, of course, he got elected with a substantial majority. And do you think that the people are still hopeful of the Prime Minister to deliver on the promises he made to the public 6 to 7 months ago? Because, with inflation standing at where it is these days and a certain degree of discontentment among the public, where is his popularity, you think, among the people of Karachi? Has it slid, or is it the same level as it was a few months ago?
Well, it's been just 100 days, and Karachi is very important, especially because Karachi has given mandate to Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and you know that in Karachi, hopes have been quite high because the city has been ruled by MKM and Pakistan People's Party has been in the province. So people are actually looking up to Imran Khan and Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf for delivering. Karachi has been a mess, as you know already, for all its civic problem. Thankfully, the security situation has been taken care of recently. But again, the issues in Karachi remain there, the civic issues especially. I think Imran Khan and also the federal government, they have a very important role to play in Karachi. Because Karachi has given mandate to Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and something that Tehreek-e-Insaf has in mind. But there has been an ongoing rift among the ranks of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf as well. Politically, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf leadership in Karachi hasn't been doing well lately because of their alliance with MKM. I know some of the members of National Assembly, they have consistently complained even to Imran Khan about their alliance with MKM, as they believe that it was MQM that they contested elections against, and they have had a long fight against MQM, and now the same MQM is sitting on the treasury benches. So there is a rift going on, and governor has been siding with trying to placate matters. He has been trying to take Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf along as well, but there is a discontentment even among the members of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, elected members of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf from Karachi.
Okay, so in other words, what you're saying is unless the Prime Minister does something soon for Karachi, his popularity may well slide. That's what you're saying.
Well, popularity has been affected. You have to see it from the perspective that there has been a price hike. Inflation has been soaring. Electricity tariffs have increased, gas price hike, all these measures, and also in Karachi, the ongoing operation against encroachment is also resulting in discontentment and unpopularity of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf government. Because we have been going to the public, we have asked, and it is not just in Karachi, it is in Punjab as well. These are the main areas from where Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf got majority of votes. And again, in these areas, during the first 100 days, government has not lived up to the expectation of people. But again, this is the time for government to take these unpopular decisions. These are tough decisions. If Imran Khan will not take these decisions now, it will be very difficult for him, because he is fresh in government. He does not has to bother about the vote bank or upcoming elections. We are not having local bodies election or any other election coming up. So I think if tough decisions and unpopular decisions had to be taken, now is the time. This is what Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf is doing.
So basically what he has to do is start delivering, and soon. Basically, that's what you're saying. Now, the anti-encroachment drive, it has become rather controversial. How do you expect Prime Minister Imran Khan to respond to the calls to end this drive? As you know, this drive has hurt a lot of roadside businesses in Karachi. Many people say that the government should have taken measures to placate the business owners, the roadside business owners, before they actually started demolishing these structures. What do you think? Is he doing what is necessary to respond to these calls to end the drive?
Well, and the question of encroachment in Karachi is a big one, and there is no denying the fact that these encroachments have taken place, and they had taken place over a number of years. This has been an ongoing process. But there is a humanitarian side to it as well. And I think the government, the matter is already in court. The anti-encroachment drive, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf says that it started on the orders of court. So it is not the government, it is actually the court that ordered to clear all these encroachments. And this is a guard that they have been taking. But I think people believe that it is government who has done that. But again, in Karachi, you know, the encroachment issue has also been associated with the security problem as well. There've been mafias who've been doing these encroachments. So I think you have to look at the picture holistically.
Right.
In that, the court the matters of court the matter should be settled in court anyway.
Right. Do you think, Rahman, do you think that the government has handled the demolition of the demolition of the encroachments properly? Have they addressed the issue appropriately, you think, or has it been mismanaged?
Well, in some areas they have actually, and in some areas that these encroachments have been cleared. In those areas, there was no action against these encroachments for a number of years, and that's why the problem got so bad.
That's right.
But again, this is happening, and I think as the law should take its course. The government is on board with this. You have to understand it, and this is what people believe as well. Because without government's approval, these orders have been there, but there was no action in times of MQM when it was ruling the city, when it had the authority, and also with People's Party and certain government as well.
Okay.
So Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf is taking action on the orders of the court, but again, I believe that government and court is on the same page as far as anti-encroachment drive is concerned.
Okay. Now, in the last 30 days, there have been 4 terror attacks in Karachi. How much is that a concern for the ruling party, at the centre, for the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, these terror incidents in Karachi over the last 30 days?
Well, terrorism and security, and especially in context of Karachi, I think it hasn't been a question. It hasn't been a political question. It has always been a question for our military establishment, and they've been taking action. They have done operation in Karachi with the help of Rangers, and it has been a concerted effort where politicians or political circles have been in a sort of facilitating role where they had little input. Primarily, it has been done, the security situation has been dealt by the military establishment, and it was, as you know, part of Operation Zarb-e-Azb and now part of Operation Raddul Fasad as well. It is not a matter for the political government as much, although I believe it is, but not to that extent where they should be worried as to what they will do about it. It is more a question for the military establishment to see that these sporadic terror attacks have happened, although different in nature. But I think you will see the action taking place soon against these as well, because we saw that after Chinese consulate attack, there have been a rapid enhancement of security around the consulates and important buildings as well, because there were other reports too of such attacks.
Yeah.
No, I think it is not a matter of concern for our politicos in strict sense of the word.
Okay. Now let me turn to corruption here. Of course, as you know, corruption was the main platform of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and its election campaign. It was basically elected on that particular manifesto to stop the corruption in the country. How do you think the party is doing in that regard, as far as stopping corruption is concerned? Of course, there are calls by the opposition that it is just selective accountability that's taking place, targeting the opposition. What is your view on that?
Well, corruption and accountability, they have been politicized, and it's been politicized in Punjab as well as in Sindh and in other parts as well. So I think for next 3 or 4 years, all this process of accountability and any anti-corruption drive will be political. And this is what is happening right now in the case of Shehbaz Sharif as well. Also in case of Asif Ali Zardari as well. You know, Asif Ali Zardari termed cases against him as part of wrapping up 18th Amendment, and has been linking to that as well. So I think it has, the entire process has become politicized, and it has become politicized for a reason, because when you target these high-profile leaders, and only from the opposition parties they are being targeted, that is when opposition's narrative gets stronger and stronger. I think NAB and also government needs to step up its efforts and do an across-the-board accountability in order to ensure the public as well as opposition political parties as well, that this process is not of political victimization. Accountability is taking place, and these measures that they have taken, they are against corruption and not particular individuals or opposition leaders.
Rahman, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Rahman Azhar, political analyst, journalist, giving us his views on the Prime Minister's visit to Karachi. Important visit, of course. As he said, the popularity of the Prime Minister may well head down if he does not start delivering on his promises soon. And as he said, difficult decisions are going to have to be made. Now, I've got some comments on the anti-encroachment drive. I thought it was rather poorly conducted. Of course, these encroachments should not have taken place at all. They have been ignored simply for so many years that they have now mushroomed all over the city. It was the responsibility of previous governments in Sindh, as far as Karachi is concerned. It was the responsibility of previous Sindh governments to make sure that this issue had never started, that this encroachment issue should have been handled according to the law, and these encroachments ended as soon as they had begun. This issue has been neglected to such an extent that we have now reached a position where it's very difficult to placate the stallholders, the business owners who have established their enterprises on the roadside. But still, the anti-encroachment drive has to continue. But the government must make sure that it negotiates with these business owners before it starts demolishing their structures. They have to be compensated in some way. You cannot possibly take away the livelihoods of tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people without adequately compensating them. The government must first talk to these business owners before they start the demolition process. And then after that, once the compensation measures have concluded and agreed upon, then and only then should these structures be demolished. That is not as hard as some people are making it out to be. But that is absolutely essential. Otherwise, we will have huge discontent on our hands on the level of the masses. The government surely does not want that. We will now take a break. When we come back, of course, we will discuss and analyze another leading current affairs topic of the day. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you after the break. Good to have you back. Almost 1,000 people have been taken into custody by the French police as the Yellow Vest protests have once again erupted nationwide. Police in Paris have also fired rubber bullets and tear gas on the fourth weekend of the anti-government protests that have now turned violent. Around 126 people were injured, but none seriously, thankfully. And according to government figures, 3 policemen were also injured during the clash. The Yellow Vests are part of a grassroots citizens movement that began over rising fuel prices, but has since grown into something much larger. While the fuel tax was the initial point, these protests are not really about gas tariffs. They're about French financial woes more generally. In response, the French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe has vowed to, quote, restore national unity, and has said that discussions with peaceful protesters, quote, must continue. He further said President Emmanuel Macron, who many protesters want to stand down, would soon, quote, put forward measures to foster this dialogue. Now, it should be noted that French President Emmanuel Macron has not said a word to the French people since the protest started. In fact, the decision to suspend the fuel tax for 6 months was taken by the Prime Minister Philippe instead. As the protests have erupted in France, other European countries have also taken a clue from these protests. Yellow Vest protests in Belgium's capital, Brussels, came out in force demanding resignation of Prime Minister Charles Michel, which police responded to with full force and detained more than 100 people there. In the Dutch city of Rotterdam, a few hundred protesters in the high-visibility Yellow Vests walked peacefully across the downtown Erasmus Bridge, singing a song about the Netherlands and handing flowers to passers-by. Conventional or unconventional methods aside, the protests can be taken at their literal as well as the figurative level. But one thing that these protests have showed is that the neoliberal economic model that has been imposed for far too long is not working as predicted. Disenfranchised workers are angry, and their cries must be listened listened to, for they cannot be ignored for too long. Now, to talk more about these ongoing protests, we are now joined by someone who follows these developments very closely. She is international relations expert, Dr. Huma Baqai, joins us on the telephone. Dr. Baqai, thank you so much for joining us. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Now, how challenging have these yellow vest protests become for Emmanuel Macron? Do you think his presidency is now at stake? How serious is it for him?
I think it's not just his presidency that is at stake. I think the whole economic order of the West and the capitalism as it is practiced is at stake. Because like you rightly pointed out in your introduction, that it is now not confined to Paris or France, and it is spreading to the rest of Europe. And this whole anti-globalization protests were street protests and symbolic, but they're just gaining more momentum over the years. And France is the worst manifestation of it. President Macron, who's a former banker, has reforms that are seen by many as pro-rich. So the taxation regime, the anti-carbon tax that was imposed on fuel are just seen as manifestations of extended capitalism, which is making rich richer and is squeezing the poor. And this, I don't think France has seen such violent protests in a very, very long time.
Right, yeah. Not since 1968, yeah. Right.
Shops were looted, 200 plus cars last time burned, and there is overall, overall feel of anarchy that exists. And you're right, Macron is not speaking to the people, but I hear that on Monday he's going to have his first interaction with the people. He's going to make a speech to the French people, but at the same time he's also initiated a dialogue which will supposedly make a dent, because the initial withdrawal that he did on the fuel prices has not been able to abate the rising protest. The numbers that have diminished are very, very few, because we had 1,37,000 people protesting last time. Even this time it had 1,25,000 people on the streets. They're defiant, they're aggressive, and the pushback is not happening. I mean, there are armored cars in the capital of France, more deployment of anti-riot police, but none of this has controlled the situation. I think it is going to happen when a real turnaround on the economic policies happen, to which to date Macron is insisting that he will not go back, because to introduce investment and generate employment, he had to reduce taxes on the elite class, on the rich class.
Right.
Very negative light.
Right. Dr. Baqai, what do you think Emmanuel Macron should do now to placate the protesters, to stop these protests? And in the long term, what should he do to make sure this doesn't happen again? What reforms do you think that France needs to undertake?
I think in the short term, he must do something to control the situation, bring normalcy back to Paris, back to France. Paris earns by tourism. This is the biggest deterrent. Everybody who's been to Paris ever can identify being in those places and seeing the kind of chaos that exists there.
Right.
And on the long term, I think it's not just Paris, it's the Western capitalist system. I think capitalism is broken. It's without conscience. And a capitalism which is exclusive of large majority of people, it is exclusive of vulnerable groups. So they have to, and now with nothing on the pushback side, no communism, so to say, capitalism just has to reinvent itself. And then we have the median consensus. You have China, which has lifted people from poverty, and on the other hand, you have West, where the number of homeless people or the number of growing. So this is just not an equation that is sustainable. Something has to be done about it in the long term. That's how I see it. And it's also new liberalism. You see the kind of problems new liberalism is bringing to this world. So it's time we heard to people like Chomsky, who has been pointing out to this a long time ago, that how new liberalism is as fascist as perhaps other extreme response.
Right. Now, Dr. Baqai, I wanted to talk to you about something that some analysts are concerned about, that the economic conditions in France and I suppose by extension in the rest of Europe, in the European Union, these economic woes may well translate to a further rise of the extreme right parties in these countries, and that's going to affect.
I think the rise of the right is already a
Right.
European reality, and in France also. You see that rightist populist movements have made a comeback. Again, they're ferocious, they're aggressive, they want to bypass laws, they are personality oriented. So in some ways, the larger construct of it is that probably the democratic norms are sort of being pushed back and being compromised upon. And moreover, for Europe, there were two things that Europe sort of pillared upon. The pillars of European configuration was free market economy and liberal values. And I think both free market economy and liberal values are receiving the worst kind of pushback we have ever seen. And unless we reinvent them, like I said earlier, more inclusive in nature, I think Europe is in for very difficult times.
Okay, so are you saying then that other countries in Europe, other than France, could see this?
Oh
what
yes,
do you think?
absolutely. I think Germany has this rightist uprising. Brexit was a very pertinent example of it. It's like you said, a very quiet demonstration also happened in the Netherlands.
Right.
So yes, these tendencies are across Europe. It's not just confined to the Yellow Vest protest in France. The Yellow Vest protest is just a very, very nasty face of whatever is happening in all of Europe, and I think it's time they revisited the whole paradigm.
Okay, but you don't see a threat to the unity of the European Union. You just think that the European...
No, I think European Union, the model is crumbling. It's time we realize and acknowledge that.
Okay. Dr. Baqai, thank you so much for joining us. Good to have you. That was Dr. Huma Baqai, international relations expert, commenting on the Yellow Vest protests in France. As she said, we could see such protests in the rest of the European Union as well. Of course, one hopes that we don't. But there is a chance that we could see such protests, according to her, in the rest of Europe as well. I think France is probably the worst example, I think, as far as the neoliberal policies are concerned. She referred to the tax breaks given to the rich. Those will have to be rolled back. Emmanuel Macron is going to have to become a more populist leader. If you saw an interview some time back on an international news channel, Emmanuel Macron had openly said that he would not rescind the fuel tax increase, that he would deliver. Of course, he was forced to back down. He may be forced to back down even further. But I think the reforms in France are going to have to go much beyond that. The reforms are going to have to take into consideration the sentiments and the interests of the common man, not just the rich. That is at the root of what's happening in France right now. Now, moving on to another important international topic of the day, the People's Republic of China has warned Canada that there would be severe consequences if it did not immediately release Huawei's chief financial officer, Meng Wanzhou. Meng Wanzhou, who is also the daughter of the founder of China's technological giant Huawei, had been arrested on the 1st of this month and now faces extradition to the United States, which alleges that she covered up her company's links to a firm that tried to sell equipment to Iran despite sanctions. Now, if she's extradited to the United States, Meng would face charges of conspiracy to defraud multiple financial institutions with a maximum sentence of 30 years for each charge. That is according to the initial hearing by a Canadian court 2 days ago. In a statement yesterday, China's foreign ministry said the vice foreign minister, Lei Yu-cheng, had issued the warning to release Meng Wanzhou to Canada's ambassador in Beijing, summoning him to lodge, quote, a strong protest. China's official news agency reported that the country's vice foreign minister summoned the Canadian ambassador John McCallum in protest and urged Ottawa to release Meng immediately or face, quote, grave consequences that the Canadian side should be held accountable for. This is another international issue that is certainly a cause for concern. China has long held the view that its citizens are targeted in not only the United States, but throughout the West, but in particular, of course, the US. This arrest could actually expand into something much more serious if it is not diffused in time. China, of course, has stood by the threat that it issued to Canada yesterday, saying again that it will impose consequences on the Canadian side if the Huawei chief financial officer is not released. Of course, one can only hope that justice is done for the CFO, because now justice, it seems, has fallen prey in many cases to geopolitics. That should never be the case. Geopolitics should never have anything to do with justice. One, as I said, only hopes that justice is done for the chief financial officer of Huawei Corporation and that it does not have adverse consequences for both China and Canada. We will now take a break. When we come back, we will have discussion and analysis on another leading current affairs topic of the day. We'll see you after the break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Players of the Pakistan cricket team, including captain Sarfaraz Ahmed, have now returned home after facing defeat in the quote home test series. Of course, they're technically not a home test series, but the ICC has agreed to regard it as such. It was played in the United Arab Emirates. New Zealand beat Pakistan by 123 runs on the fifth day of the third and final test on Friday to win the three-match series 2-1. Pakistan was set 280 runs to win, but the inconsistent batsmen were dismissed for 156 in the 57th over, with spinners Ejaz Patel and debutant Will Somerville taking 3 wickets each in Abu Dhabi. Now, this was New Zealand's first away series win against Pakistan since their 1-0 win in Pakistan back in 1969. That was 49 years ago. Pakistan lost all 10 wickets on the final day in both the defeats that they suffered in this test series. Of course, they lost the first test match by just 4 runs. In an upset, Pakistan have now lost all 10 wickets on the final day 6 times since Mickey Arthur joined the team in May of 2016. Just a little trivia there for you. Disgruntled coach Mickey Arthur has now demanded that his players toughen up and seize key moments in test matches after sloppy batting handed New Zealand an away series win. Mickey Arthur told reporters that the team missed several key opportunities that could have forced a win for the hosts. But in a highly disappointing manner, Pakistan ended up on the losing end. Arthur said that he backs his players, especially under fire senior batsman Azhar Ali and Asad Shafiq, but the team, he said, needs to toughen up and seize the moments that could change the match. Pakistan now face a crucial away test series against South Africa, with a few changes made in the squad. The selectors have recalled fast bowler Mohammad Amir, left-handed openers Shan Masood and Fakhar Zaman, and leg spinner Shadab Khan, leaving behind in-form Bilal Asif, uncapped batsman Saad Ali and fast bowler Mir Hamza. Sarfaraz Ahmed has been retained as the captain of the side, which opens the tour with the first test match at Centurion starting on the 26th of this month. But coming under fire for having too much workload, Sarfaraz Ahmed sees the possibility of giving up the captaincy, at least in the longer format of the game. Mohsin Hassan Khan, who is the head of Pakistan's cricket committee, has even argued publicly that Sarfaraz should relinquish the test captaincy. Now, the Pakistan cricket team's performance in this particular series, of course, as you know, over the last couple of days, has come under immense fire. And rightly so. The problem that Pakistan used to have decades ago is still with us. What is that problem? The problem is that the Pakistani team has a certain inability and difficulty rising to the occasion when the situation demands it, especially in the last innings of a test match. Pakistan's batsmen have never learnt, it seems, how to stay at the wicket and protect their wickets. They always seem to be in a hurry to get the score. Now, take the example of this last test match. Pakistan had to bat out just 79 overs. 79 overs on the final day, and they could have saved the test match and the series. The series would have ended at 1 win apiece. Pakistan's batsmen couldn't do that. This, more than anything else, is a matter of temperament. Mickey Arthur, instead of saying that he has certainly faith in his players, which he's bound to say because he's associated with the team, he cannot possibly say that he no longer has hope in the Pakistan cricket team. He has to say what he has said. But beyond that, what Mickey Arthur has to realize is that the temperament of the Pakistani cricket team needs to be worked on. That needs to be improved. Pakistan's batsmen have to stay at the wicket. They need to learn to stay at the wicket. Just as fielding was an Achilles heel for Pakistan, always has been, ever since partition, similarly, the temperament of the Pakistan cricketers, the Pakistan batsmen, and their inability to stay at the wicket has caused their downfall this time yet again. Mickey Arthur has no choice but to instruct the Pakistani players to stay cool and calm under pressure and to protect their wickets and to work on their temperament. There's no other way. The ability in the Pakistan cricket team is there. There's no question about that. And Mickey Arthur knows it as much, if not better, than anyone else. Temperament is the key to Pakistan's cricketing success in the future. Let's take a break here. We will have discussion and analysis on another leading current affairs topic of the day. When we come back, we'll see you after the break. Don't go anywhere. Glad you stayed with us. The stock market has remained jittery in the outgoing week, and it fell by 4.8% or 1,934 points and stood at 38,562. This was the largest decline in 67 weeks since last year's 18th of August. The bears dominated trading during the week amid concerns over falling foreign currency reserves, weak macroeconomic indicators, tight monetary policy, and plunging commodities prices. Moreover, international oil prices remained volatile as the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and non-OPEC countries were meeting in the Austrian capital Vienna on the 6th and the 7th of this month. Now, as the first non-Pakistani chief executive officer of the Pakistan Stock Exchange, the Canadian-born Richard Morin has big plans to revamp the Pakistan Stock Exchange and introduce up-and-coming technologies to improve the trading mechanisms. From improving protection and securities mechanism for both retail investors and brokers, to introducing a domestic exchange-traded fund, better known as the ETF, Richard Morin believes that the Pakistan Stock Exchange has great potential to become one of the best-performing stock markets in both Asia and around the world. To promote investment and business opportunities in Pakistan through the stock exchange, the Pakistan Stock Exchange, with the help of the cycling group Critical Mass Karachi, has organized a cycling rally around the area of Clifton and Sadr in Karachi. At the stock exchange, Richard Morin, meanwhile, gave a thoughtful address about the relationship between biking and investment, in which he said that both require patience and a long-term goal in mind for a successful journey.
Investing in the stock market is not like a 25-kilometer ride through the streets of Karachi. It's very much more like a day's journey, a several days journey to Islamabad. There will be ups and downs, there will be some nice scenery, there will be some less pleasant roads, but in the end you'll find yourself a lot higher than when you started in Karachi.
The cyclists who participated were both hobbyists and professionals belonging to various industries. And all of them suggested that through this message of healthy activity, they aim to promote a message of good business environment and a huge potential for the stock market's success.
Now that I am here and I have seen all the dynamics, I have understood all the ups and downs, and we have talked to several people. It's like these kind of activities make you go out of your homes, think bigger, think about the other perspectives of our capital investments.
Awareness is one thing, because in Pakistani stock market, a lot of people don't invest. So having the opportunity to come visit stock exchange, they might be interested to know more about the stock exchange and maybe go on to invest into the market as well.
This is all because the situation is improving, and this is to encourage a healthy lifestyle as well as healthy investments in the future. And both are very, very correlated. We are presenting a very positive image of Pakistan.
After the cycling rally ended, the Pakistan Stock Exchange Chief Executive Officer Richard Morin talked to us about his hopes for the emerging stock powerhouse.
PSX is far more than just a company. It's an institution that belongs to all Pakistanis. And I made an analogy with biking. In fact, biking is a little bit the reverse of investing. We work hard on the way up when we bike, and we enjoy going down. So very different from investing. But in both cases, however, I think it's in everybody's interest that more people bike. It's also in everybody's interest that more people invest on the stock market. Our aim at Pakistan Stock Exchange is to change the perception of the exchange from that of a closed club of brokers and savvy investors, which is very far from the truth. The exchange is an institution, as I said earlier, that belongs to all Pakistanis. Our aim is to get middle-class Pakistan to invest on PSX. We're looking for 5 million investors to come to invest on the Pakistan Stock Exchange. And no other type of investment provides them the type of return that's available on the stock market.
At a time when macroeconomic concerns loom large for both investors and brokers, the board of the Pakistan Stock Exchange is working diligently to bring new reforms to safeguard the mechanisms of day-to-day trading. With the approach of the new year, there are all sorts of renewed hopes for the economy. But with the depreciating rupee, growing deficits and a bailout package in sight, only time will tell how Pakistan can bounce back from a near crisis-like situation. Of course, as we have indicated on this particular program before, the biggest enemy any stock exchange has, and that of course includes the Pakistan Stock Exchange, is uncertainty and lack of clarity. Unfortunately, the Pakistani economy has had plenty of that over the last 4 months or so that this new government has been in power. The economy is the biggest challenge for the new Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf-led government, and it must strive for clarity and to eliminate uncertainty. This government has been rather wishy-washy on the topic of going to the International Monetary Fund, for example, for a bailout package. That is something that the stock markets absolutely hate. And of course, the investors, including the small investors, suffer when the stock market falls or crashes. This government must take into account that clarity is wanted, it is needed, and uncertainty must diminish if the stock market and the country's economy is to take off. That is something the government must work on. The sooner the government decides exactly what to do as far as the International Monetary Fund bailout package is concerned, the amount of that package is concerned, as well as the other measures that they're considering for the economy, as soon as they decide on clarity and as soon as they decide on diminishing the level of uncertainty, the stock market will only be helped and the economy as a result will take off. That is a lesson that this government must learn and learn soon. And that's all the time we have for tonight's edition of Beyond the News. Of course, don't forget to join us, same time, same place, tomorrow night for another edition of the program. Until then, on behalf of our team here at Beyond the News, thank you so much for watching. And of course, we'll see you tomorrow night.